Before 1964's March on Washington, before Selma, and way before Charlottesville, it was the Freedom Riders. Tonight, we'll talk with one of those early civil rights activists about what he did to help change America. Coming up now. Hey, it's Elliot. 60 years ago, this May, 13 people, 7 black and 6 white, boarded buses in Washington, D.C., headed to the Deep South. Now, their plan was to demand that an earlier U.S. Supreme Court ruling that banned racial discrimination in interstate travel be enforced. It wasn't long before the buses and those riders were viciously attacked by mobs of hateful white people, as some police and some officials turned a blind eye. Eventually, some 400 riders joined the effort that ended in Mississippi when Attorney General Robert Kennedy ordered the Interstate Commerce Commission to remove all Jim Crow signs, effectively ending segregated bus facilities across the U.S. Over 300 riders were imprisoned for their civil resistance, including this young man, Miller Green, who joins us from his home outside of Chicago this evening. Mr. Green, thank you for joining us. How are you this evening?
Fine, and you?
I'm doing well. Thank you again for making time for us this evening. We've talked before in the past week or so, and I've looked at that photo that we just saw a number of times. I'm sure you have as well. This was taken when you were about 18, was it not? What were you thinking at the time?
Well, I have been waiting on the opportunity. I knew there had to be a change, and I was waiting on the opportunity. And when the opportunity appeared, I was ready to make that change.
Mm-hmm. And when you were arrested at that particular moment, what was going through your mind? Did you think, oh, maybe I got myself in a little too deep, or were you resolved to do what you had come to do?
Well, the night that we were asked to participate, uh, some of the fellows say, "Let's wait until tomorrow. We are not clean enough." But that was fear. And I made the statement, well, if I don't do it tonight, I'm not coming back tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So Reverend James Belville, who was the person that came to us and asked us to participate, he took several other people and put them in the corner to convince them to go with me. But I
Wow.
had made up my mind, this is an opportunity. And I said, well, I would rather be dead than to be a slave, dead and be buried in my grave. You
Wow.
know, I had never been abused,
Mm-hmm.
but I've seen other people abused. Okay. And I just couldn't take it anymore. You know, uh, a man never became a man. A black man never became a man, even if he was 80 years old or 100 years old. He
Sure.
was always called a boy.
Right.
And I just couldn't accept that.
Right. Right. You were one of 400 or so, give or take 10 or 20 people who eventually joined that march. Now, your leg of the march came where? From your hometown in Jackson, Mississippi? Tell me about that.
Jackson, Mississippi.
Hmm. How did you
I
become?
I don't really think that the organization had really thought about recruiting anybody from Jackson, Mississippi, because we didn't really see anyone recruiting. I really didn't hear anyone that was recruiting. I think what happened was that Ross Barnett was a strong governor, and Ross Barnett was telling the president John F. Kennedy that it was just the outside agitators, while Dr. King was trying to get the president to intervene. The president was telling Dr. King is that what the governor is saying, that all of these people are from the outside.
Hmm.
And if you want me to intervene, you need to get someone from the state of Mississippi. So that's when they start recruiting people from Mississippi.
Yeah.
But I don't think they had really thought about they needed us at the beginning. But after they had exhausted a lot of funds and all, somebody realized, and with the governor saying over and over again that it was just the outside agitators. So they had no other choice but to come and solicit people out of the state of Mississippi.
Hmm. Interesting. Now, they just didn't come to your door, pick you up at your house, and bring you down and turn you into a freedom rider. You, after you made the decision to do that, and many of the other riders as well, there was a certain amount of orientation that you had to undertake. In the form of just understanding whether or not you were the right kind of person to engage in this nonviolent protest. Tell me about that.
Believe it or not, we had very little questions, a presentation, or training.
Mm-hmm.
We were in a place called the El Ranchos, okay, where they sold food and they had a dance hall there where the teenagers would go there to dance after a football game or a basketball game. We were sitting at a booth, probably talking about what had happened on the 4th of July. And up steps a man comes in with overalls, which was very unrare to see, who decided to sit in the booth with us. His name was Reverend James Bevel. He started telling us that they had came there to integrate the state of Mississippi, and they needed help from the people in the state of Mississippi. We'd never seen this man before.
Hmm.
20 minutes later, he wasn't driving. We wasn't driving that night.
Mm-hmm.
He got us a ride on the other side of town. It reminded me of when the disciples just left everything and followed Jesus. We had no idea, never seen this man before.
Wow.
We get across town, which was Masonic Temple, and he's telling us to do something that we had never seen anybody from the state of Mississippi to do. And we had seen all the brutality that had been going on with the other freedom riders coming in and out in the city, beating bloody, stomped, calling all kind of names.
Mm-hmm.
So we had seen this. Okay. Now here's a man that we never seen is telling us to go into the white entrance of the Trolley bus station to purchase a ticket to go to New Orleans. So you can imagine what we're thinking about. You know, you grew up in this city.
Mm-hmm.
You've never seen a black man, not even a cab driver, go into the white entrance.
Sure. Sure.
And now the strangers convincing you to do this. So you can imagine what was going through our heads.
Yeah.
But I had been waiting on that opportunity, so I really didn't hesitate.
Yeah. But I imagine, though, once you became involved in it, there I would imagine, must have been a moment where you were at least concerned for your safety, if not concerned for your life at any time.
Well, I say this, most of the freedom riders had been trained in nonviolence.
Mm-hmm.
We never had that at all. We was just raw, okay? Okay. We didn't have time to think about whether we could deal with nonviolence at all.
It's amazing to many of us to look back at this and understand that much of it was conducted. I mean, you had older people who were part of the freedom rides at the time, but the vast majority of the people who were on those buses and who encountered the police and who were beaten and endured all that, including yourself, basically, were just kids, you know?
Well, I would say that most of them, the freedom riders, was much older than we were.
Mm-hmm.
We had just finished high school, and most of the freedom riders was in college. So we was probably the youngest,
Mm-hmm.
with no training about nonviolence at all.
Right.
The majority of the freedom riders had gone through the training of nonviolence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it was like we was just dropped there, okay, to deal with whatever we had to go through.
when you were arrested, after you were arrested during that mugshot, what was that like? The reading that I've come across describes conditions where many people were put in a cell only designed for 2 or 3 people, left there for weeks. What were the conditions that you found yourself under after you were incarcerated?
Well, the night that we was arrested, we was taken to the city jail. And when they found out that we were from Jackson, Mississippi, they refused to put us in a cell. They told us to get on the phone, call your mother, and tell them to come pick you up. We know that Dr. King influenced you all, and we love you all. And we walked around in the jail till about 5 o'clock that morning. And they called us in again to ask us whether we wanted a cigarette, to make the call to your parents to tell them to come pick you up. And at that point, I told them that I was dissatisfied with the conditions in the state of Mississippi. And I said, we'll be here to the jail rock. That's when they decided to start fingerprinting us and taking the mugshot.
Mm-hmm. Wow, incredible. Um, are you? What do you think when you all these years later, and we see there was this lull in activity? I think in activity with activists and activist movements after a certain point in our history, and I think people became quite complacent about what it was we needed to do, what was left to do within civil rights. And then all of a sudden, what, 4 or 5 years ago, we see all this racism coming back again. But with it, we see organizations such as Black Lives Matter and other organizations as well. What do you make of these organizations that have come up? In some ways, it sounds like they're taking cues from what you and many other activists did in the '60s, and then some things they're doing on their own, and have made up new ways as well. What do you think of them when you see some of the efforts that they're making these days and some of the things that they face?
Well, it really brought joy to my heart because my problem was, why did it take so long? Why is it that you can't see what I see?
Mm-hmm.
So it brought a lot of joy. And I felt that my work had not been in vain.
Yeah. Do,
And I feel better today than I felt 50 years ago.
yeah. No. Any was there I mean, we're both, and again, I was involved, not certainly not at the level that you were, but I was an activist at a point in my life very early on. But you were there much earlier at a much higher level. Many of us were out there, but every now and then I see some of these groups and I think to myself, geez, I want to be out there with them. You ever feel that? I mean, it's almost impossible. We saw people, again, one of the riders who people know, John Lewis, he was out there on one of those days, despite his illness at the time. You ever feel like to get back out there in that street again and walk with these folks?
I never stopped. Every major demonstration that was held in the city of Chicago, I was a part of it.
Wow.
There's no way that I could sit back and I'm in good health and not participate.
Mm-hmm. Wow. If What do you see going forward? We, I think, learned a lot in the past year or two through the efforts of a lot of people and a lot of hard work. The voter outreach was just phenomenal, and we saw that at the polls this past November, where a number of voters came out and voted and turned things around. I think voters now understand, for a large part, particularly certain voting blocks, women, black women in particular, blacks in general, and a number of other voting groups understand the power of that vote. But yet and still, we still have we still have these problems that we have to deal with. This underlying racism that has been kicked up by the former president, by Donald Trump, and we have got a lot of work to do going forward. What do you see as our best way forward in trying to handle or mitigate this problem?
Well, I do believe that more people have realized and come to the conclusion that your vote is the most powerful thing that you have. I think this is the first time that we've had so many people to realize this. Being black, it's like you have three alternatives: demonstrate, boycott, or what did I say? Demonstrate,
Demonstrate,
boycott,
boycott, and
and the I'm trying to think of the other one.
and be involved. I would think, just in general.
Definitely being involved.
Huh.
Okay, that's vitally important.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to be involved. Okay, and in the past, what is happening is that too many people have sat on the sideline waiting on somebody else to do the work for them, and that has been a major problem.
Mm-hmm.
Majority are sitting on the sideline waiting on somebody else. I'm not going to risk my life. I have a family over here. My kids are going to the university. We're doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to ignore that until they are confronted to recognize that you are no different than those people that's out there demonstrating. And sometimes you wake up then
Mm-hmm.
and you decided, let me join the bandwagon.
Interesting. And we had this conversation earlier, Joe. I told you about my son, fine young man. At least his parents think so. About 25 years of age at this point, but he grew up in an environment where he felt he felt comfortable in a multicultural environment, and as a result, came to think that there's no racism. Everybody's living fine. Everybody's, getting along just fine. For the most part, that's what he saw. But we tried to instill in him that those problems, those people out there still exist. They're still around. You're still gonna have to deal with them. And even though you haven't walked down the street every week or every day, and somebody's calling you a nigger, and you may not have heard it while you were growing up, you're gonna hear it. And my last note to him was that you gotta understand that going forward, don't take all this for granted. At the end of the day, you're just a black man in America, and keep that in mind. I mean, I would imagine that you've had some similar conversations with people in your family.
Well, I was very disappointed when I saw young people using the word nigger as something that was hip. I
Yeah.
was very hurtful for me to hear this because I'm saying, where have you been? How can you take this word and consider this is a hip word?
Mm-hmm.
When you hear each other use that word, then other people feel like, well, it's okay to use it because it's hip now. These people won't get angry.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think you should get angry because, see, when I grew up, we were always taught if you wasn't a nigger, you had no reason to get angry.
Mm-hmm.
You only get angry because you feel that way. So I never got angry when someone would call me that. But I don't ever remember anyone calling me that until I came to Chicago.
Mm. Really?
Really.
Wow.
No one in Mississippi has ever called me a nigger, but it happened in Chicago.
No kidding. Can I ask why you think that is? Because obviously there are some people in Mississippi who are thinking it, but they don't. vocalize it? Or it's funny because people will always say this. You talk to people and they'll say, well, I prefer being in the South because at least with the people in the South, there are a known quantity. They're a known quantity. I know what I'm getting. I know what's on their mind. I don't have to guess at what they're thinking about me or what I'm thinking about them. But here in the North, especially where I grew up, people have a lot of criticism. Boston, places like Boston, Chicago was another one where people say people just don't. They're not authentic in how they feel. They try and tell you one thing and do another. How close am I there?
Well, being raised in the South, we did not have the illusion that black people had in the North. We knew what the situation was in the South. White people in the South will tell you face to face whether they like you or not. If they wanted to call you a nigger, they would call you a nigger. But I was never called one.
Mm-hmm.
But in Chicago, blacks had that illusion that they were free because the white man was laughing in front of their face and at the same time stabbing them in the back.
Yeah.
So we did not have that illusion. We knew what the situation was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we had the same as the white had. We had our parks, we had our schools, we had our golf course and all. So it was just separate.
Mm-hmm.
And at one time, black and white used to go to the movie together.
Hmm.
You would go inside to purchase a ticket, and you had to come back outside to go up the fire escape to take you upstairs. And for some reason, they decided, I guess, probably some of the blacks was pouring pop down on them, and they decided, well, we need to separate them.
Mm-hmm.
So they built us theaters. We had like 3 theaters, So we were separate. We didn't socialize together. Okay. We stayed on our side of town. There were no white neighborhood that blacks could go in and be afraid that they was going to be abused.
Mm-hmm.
Because somebody mother was working for Miss Ann or Mr. Scott. But when I came to Chicago, there was neighborhoods where you couldn't be caught at night.
Sure.
You would lose your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we didn't have that problem in Jackson, Mississippi.
Interesting.
We could go into the white neighborhoods all time of night, and we didn't have that problem.
Interesting. Hey, just off the top of my head, are you still in touch with any of the people who you were engaged in that summer that summer freedom rides with?
Yes. In
Who?
fact, one of my classmates passed away. I think about maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to keep in contact with the people that was went to jail at the same time, because see, everybody went in at a different time.
Right.
And people came out at a different time. So you never got a chance to meet everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The first time that we all came together was when Oprah Winfrey invited us to be on her show, which was a blessing. And I think of today, she flew people in, put them up in hotels. It was all free.
Right.
And it was one of the greatest things that could have happened to the Freedom Riders. And I still thank her today, because through her, she exposed a lot of things that a lot of people didn't know anything about. And I thank God.
And she brought you guys together. Brought everybody, guys and
Brought
gals, all
everybody
together.
together. Brought everybody together.
Good for her.
Fans too.
Good
If
for her.
anybody tell you about Miss Oprah, and she's Miss Oprah to me. Okay.
Hey, last question. Now that we have a new administration in place, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, first Black, Asian woman vice president, it's quite an achievement. what's your best advice for that administration going forward? They're not even into their second week yet. They've got their first 100 days ahead of them, and they certainly have a lot on their plate. What would seeing everything that you've seen and doing everything that you've done down through the years to help make this possible, along with many of your colleagues, what's the best advice you have for that administration going forward?
My best advice is to tell the president, I know how long he has been on Capitol Hill, and I know that he believed that he could sit down and negotiate with the Republicans and all that's good. But right now, people need help. Why waste the time to deal with people that you know are not seriously? And people voted for help. I think this should have been the first thing, should have gone out.
Mm-hmm.
Show people that you are sincere. And the best way you can show them that you're sincere is by putting some money in their pockets.
Yep.
Because for years in the past, you ask people to vote, and what do they get? And this is probably the first time that we were able to get as many people to believe that the vote was important. And this is why he's the president now. And I think he should not waste a lot of time, because if you waste too much time, people start thinking it's just talk.
Mm-hmm.
When you hurting, you don't have a lot of time to be waiting on nobody.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a different situation because the president can pay his bills. He's not going home hungry.
And a lot of the people in Congress.
There's no way possible that he can feel what a person is feeling right today.
Sure.
That don't have food on the table. There's no way that he could even be on that level. So if you promise people that you're going to do something, you need to do it right away before they stop believing.
Absolutely.
And we got enough people believing in lies already. So we need to try to hold on to those people that's dealing with reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now we living in a world where, 74 million people believe in a lie?
Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
So you don't have a lot of time to be sitting back, going through the motion with people that have no intentions of really doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
This is no time to impress nobody that we are trying to work together. You know, voters are not ignorant. They're not stupid.
No, they're not.
Everything the presidency, they want help right now.
Yeah.
Like yesterday.
Right. So get it done.
Get it done.
I hear that.
So we need to keep all the people that we have that's using their sanity. Right now, we need to keep those people. We don't need to lose no more people.
Mm-hmm.
And you will lose them if you keep going around trying to work with people that you know not going to work with you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So why waste the time?
Absolutely.
You know, why are you trying to impress them? They're not even trying to impress you. Why are you trying to impress them?
And
help
I think
the people that voted for you. Like yesterday, they needed help.
And I think they're going to get it done too. I think because they have a chance to do that 2 or 3 times during a year. It has to do with finance and budget. So I think the Democrats will be going ahead with a simple majority to get that COVID-19 bill passed. At least we hope they will. But all that's good advice. Good advice. Mr. Green, Miller, if I may, we've talked a number of times, so I hope we're on the first name basis. At least if we're not now, we certainly, I think, will be in the future. Thank you so much for all your thoughts and all the work that you've done over the years as well. We appreciate it. We so need it, and we so need more people like you. So stay healthy. Stay strong and keep talking, sir.
And I thank you so
All right.
very, very much.
All right. Thank you. Take care. And thank you for your company this evening. Next week, we continue our series on Black activism in February with Alicia Garza. She, of course, is the co founder of Black Lives Matter. She'll be here to talk about the organization and what steps they plan to take going forward with this new administration. That's next week here on Now, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and Facebook. Till then, thank you again for joining us. Take care. Peace.